So we're going to be talking about who is a Microsoft 365 administrator. Before I go into talking about who Microsoft, I'll just like to share with us a brief story about evolution and how transition has taken place over time, over generations. Now, many years ago, I believe that we're all familiar with Microsoft Office, where we just had a set of tools that we used to install, where we had Microsoft Word, we had Microsoft Word for writing, we had Microsoft Excel for calculations, and we had Microsoft PowerPoint for when we are doing presentations. So that was just what it was a few years ago. We had Microsoft Suite '07 then. I remember vividly, when you install it on your laptop, you'll be able to access Word, be able to do a bit of things with Excel and then PowerPoint. And it was just a simple, familiar, and powerful tool that it was working in its own way. But as the world changed, the way we worked ought to change. People moved from having offices to remote spaces. It came to a point where people were now working remotely. We had people coming to a point where they are staying from their homes to work. They don't need to go to the office. And as a result of that transition, as a result of that move, we also had people coming to a point where they moved from local storage to the cloud, from individual productivity to global collaboration. It was now getting massively exploding. So Microsoft saw the shift. They saw that this was coming, and they had to be strategically positioned to make sure that they were effective. So what did Microsoft do? Microsoft now transformed that Office suite we knew to Office 365, where people were now able to, even at their different locations, connect with each other, work in a Microsoft Word document together, edit an Excel sheet together, work with a PowerPoint presentation while in their homes, online. Everything was done online. Office 365 came in, and Office 365 gave people the ability to work from anywhere. As far as you have the tools, as far as you have access to Office 365, you can work from wherever location you are. You can do whatever you need to do. But then that was not the final destination, because the modern workspace needed more. Identity came into the picture. Security came into the picture. Now that we are working online, how do we secure our resources? Now that we are working online, how do we make sure the identity of our users are being secured? How do we make sure that we collaborate better? How do we make sure that we are able to automate processes? How do we make sure that we are able to defend ourselves against threats? Because the moment that you're working in the internet, you're working in the cloud, you're open to a lot of threats. How do you make sure that you position yourself strategically to ensure that these things do not come to you? And that was what brought about the development of Microsoft 365. And as Microsoft 365 came, as it was bettered, it also bettered with it a role, a very powerful and very, very intentional role called the Microsoft 365 administrator. And Microsoft 365 administrator is someone that is actually responsible for managing the Microsoft 365 suite. Your role is cut across a whole lot. I'm going to be showing us exactly what a typical Microsoft 365 administrator does, and also get to show you a bit of the licensing pattern for Microsoft 365, how it works. Very important. So as I said, Microsoft 365 was born. It's not just a set of apps. It's a complete ecosystem, a platform that connects people, it protects data, it empowers teams, and it keeps organizations running very smoothly. It keeps organizations running very smoothly. So it's no more just about, oh, I'm in my house, I'm able to connect with who I need to connect to and edit who I need to edit. Now, what is my identity in the organization? How can I make sure that my identity, if it is being compromised, I can report to somebody to help me to check it out? How do I make sure that my file that I'm being sent, I am making sure that the file is being sent and delivered? How do I ensure that if I send a message or I send a mail to somebody, a user in my organization or a fellow colleague, I'm sure that the message is being delivered? How do I make sure that my accounts are secure? How do I make sure that access to different resources in my organization is being modified? Nobody can access anything. Everybody has to have a level of access, and we need to be able to monitor who accesses what and what it is that they're able to do when they access those features. So that was what bettered the Microsoft 365 administrator. So it's the person who ensures that everything works, everyone stays secure, and the organization thrives in the cloud. That's what you do as an M365 administrator. You make sure that everything works, everything is secure, and the organization thrives while they're in the cloud. That there is no downtime whatsoever. If there has to be a downtime, or if there is, you're the one that will call and say, "What? You're not able to access this. What's going on?" And you should be able to be the first line of contact to troubleshoot and detect exactly what is going on. I'll also be showing us a few troubleshooting strategies that makes you an effective Microsoft 365 administrator. So as I've told you how we transited from Microsoft Office to Office 365 to Microsoft 365, and now we have the Microsoft 365 administrator. Now we are going to go into exactly why the topic matters. Why is it important for us to actually talk about who a Microsoft 365 administrator is? Why? Because number one, because of digital identity. It's important that we understand that identity is the new security parameter. Cyber attacks, when they want to attack you, when cyber attacks are coming, the first thing they target is your identity. And if they are able to get an then every other thing can collapse. If for any reason you have an organization and then a particular privileged role is being accessed by an attacker, then that person can cause a whole lot of damage to your organization by just having access to that account, right, to that identity. So since digital identity came into the picture, M365 administration became a very, very valid topic, a very, very important role for organizations to look into. Now, another reason was that organizations depend on Microsoft 365. Businesses, schools, government, they rely on 365 for daily operations. And because they rely on 365, you need to understand, as an M365 administrator, expected of me, so that you are not called upon when there's an issue and you now begin to sound like, this is not my role. No, you need to understand where you come into in the organization. You need to understand why you were employed in the first place, what is expected of you. You need to understand how you fit in your school. If you are employed as an M365 administrator of a school or of a business or of the government, you need to understand exactly what is required of you. And you need to be able to guard yourself as well as an administrator to prevent yourself from being attacked and being exploited. Another thing you have to also understand is that admins protect everything. The Microsoft 365 admins, they safeguard users, data, productivity across the organization. It's not tied to just one part of the organization. Across the organization, you have to have an idea of everything. It's actually a very broad role. It's a very broad role. It's not a role for a lazy person. It's not a role for someone who does not intend to continually learn, because there is transition taking place every single day. Now, in the advent of AI, a lot of transition is taking place. A lot of changes are happening, and you need to be on top of your game. You need to be able to understand exactly what changes Microsoft is rolling out and be able to effectively deploy it to your organization and deploy it strategically so that you don't disrupt whatever system you already built in the past time. So it's very important. It's very important. Digital identity, you have to know how to protect it. You have to know how to protect your organization members. Organizations depend on it. You need to be strategically positioned to be effective in your delivery of what you have to do. And you have to be able to protect everything. Know what you need to do to be data is protected, users are protected, access to resources are being protected. Now, what is Microsoft 365? I'm going to define it. Microsoft 365, simply put, is a cloud-based, do not forget, is a cloud-based productivity suite, productivity and collaboration platform that brings together Office applications where we have the Word, we have Excel, we have PowerPoint, communication tools like Teams and the rest. We have security services, we have device management into one unified ecosystem. Every single thing that I've talked about, that I've mentioned here, is being brought together, and they are being put together into one unified ecosystem. You have your identity and security put together. You have your apps and devices being managed, and it's being used by businesses, by schools, and by government. Government already emphasized that. So it's a cloud-based productivity suite. Everything that happens in my utility side is happening in the cloud. And the cloud, in organizations in the cloud, I am where I am, but I'm an M365 administrator for an organization that is in the US and in different locations. Do you understand? So I don't need to be where they are. I can stay where I am and be able to manage their M365 tenants, to be able to manage their organization system. That's what M365 does. Now, who is a Microsoft 365 administrator? Now, Microsoft 365 administrator is somebody who is responsible for managing the digital environment that keeps an organization running securely and productively. I'm re-emphasizing this. You're managing the digital environment that keeps an organization running securely and productively. So you will not say, I'm an M365 administrator, but security is none of my business. That's a lie. You need to understand how to secure access. You need to understand how to configure multi-factor authentication, how to monitor sign-ins, how to make sure that if for any reason there is a risky sign-in or a user sign-in risk, you should be able to say, okay, this is what happened, and this is how we need to target this. This is how we need to make sure that this access is being blocked. You need to make sure you know how to create accounts, how to assign licenses, understand the best way to make sure that you don't assign licenses carelessly. You need to make sure you know how to manage groups, the different types of groups. We have the distribution list, we have the M365 group, we have the security group. You need to understand exactly what each of these groups does, or how they function, so as to be able to educate your employers on the best way to be able to use the resources that they have allocated to them when they have subscribed to Microsoft 365. You need to understand how to configure services, set up Microsoft Teams, how to configure channels, how to make sure you set up a team, the interface between a Teams admin center and Microsoft 365 admin center, how to make sure that the meetings are being recorded, the features that are available for Teams, how to configure SharePoint, exactly how to configure SharePoint, where their data is being stored, how to access those data the easiest way possible. And when you're dealing with your organization, understand that you are the M365 administrator. So some of the technical terms or some of the things that you feel you know that are technical for you, they do not know it. So when you are presenting these details to them, you have to present it in the barest minimum possible, in the most, like, talk to them and make them understand it from I'm going to show you an example, a typical example of when you're trying to onboard a user and the kind of document you should send to the user, making sure that you do not include too many technical terms so that they do not get confused or overwhelmed. I'm going to show you that during our demo session. As I said, you configure, you set up Teams, you set up your SharePoint, you set up Exchange Online, you set up OneDrive. You ensure compliance, you support productivity while meeting regulatory requirements. Every organization has their own regulatory requirements. They have their own compliance standard. This is also being maintained while taking out your duties and responsibilities as a Microsoft 365 administrator. So understand that as an M365 administrator, you're not just tied to maybe one administrative center. I'll explain to you what I mean by administrative center when we go to the admin center. Or you're not just tied to one aspect. You need to have a broad understanding of what happens everywhere. In Entra, in Intune, in security, that's in Defender XDR, in Purview, how data is being managed, how sensitivity levels are being configured, how data loss prevention policies are being configured. You need to have a broad every single there. It gives you the ability to be able to know better how well to secure access, how well to manage the users' identities, how well to configure services, and how well to ensure compliance. The first core responsibility of an M365 administrator is identity and access. You're responsible for creating or resetting password, for assigning licenses, for managing groups, and to configuring multi-factor authentication. Now, when it has to do with creating users, there are a few things you need to also consider. For every organization that you will be privileged to join or be an M365 administrator for, there are, should I say, naming policies that govern the way users are being onboarded to the organization. It's important that you take note of the naming policy of the organization, and if possible, it's advisable that you have a checklist, so that what this checklist does is just to keep you in check, so that you do not end up making a mistake and assigning a wrong name or a wrong license to someone. Now, let me share a personal experience with you. I was supposed to onboard a user for one of my organizations that I'm working with, and I was given the details, and I had onboarded a user I had done a test before then, like a few minutes before then. So my mind was still running around with the test I had just carried out in my test tenants. So when I came and I was asked to onboard a user, I quickly just ran in. I didn't go to my checklist, and I onboarded the user, only to discover that the naming policy for the organization I was working with was supposed to be first name dot first letter of last name. I had put in first name dot the full last name. Immediately I was called, my attention was called to the fact that, bro, what's going on with you? You made a mistake that you're not supposed to make. Your gaming policy, which is first name dot first letter of last name of the organization, not first name dot last name. And I had to go back and record the document I sent to the user, trying to cover up those mistakes I made. I'm opening this up just to make you understand that it's possible that even when something as minute as creating a user looks simple, you need to make sure that the checklist you have for creating users is looked at every single time before you go ahead to create a user. Now, for resetting of passwords, you also need to understand how to reset passwords. When you're resetting a password, what do you need to do? What are the conditions that surround you going to reset the user's password? You need to confirm that whosoever is saying that their password is compromised, you need to check it and be sure that that compromise is being dealt with before you reset it and before you hand over the user account to the person. Because sometimes people can pretend to be people and try to actually get you to reset the password, giving them access to resources they ought not to have access to. Then under assigning licenses, you need to have an idea of the different kinds of licenses that we have under Microsoft 365. In the area of licenses, I need to understand something. I believe most of us have an idea of how DSTV functions. You know how that we have different subscriptions. You have what do we call it? We have different plans for DSTV. We have compact, we have premium, whereby when you pay for a particular thing, you are going to have different channels based on what you paid for. So let's say if you paid for compact, you're going to have a certain level of channel. If you pay for premium, you're going to have a certain level of channels. So now, if you go into M365 and you try to assign licenses, if you're dealing with the business basic license, for instance, we have that business basic license is dealt with, is effective when you're dealing with users, an organization that has a user that is below 300 users. Business basic comes in, business premium comes in, and then there are features that are available to you based on that. We also have the E5 license, the E3 license with it. We also have individual family plans for people that are in for just their family. So those are things you need to also understand. Under groups, we have the security group, we have the M365 group, we have the distribution list, and then we also have the dynamic distribution list that is configurable from the Exchange Administrative Center. I'll try and see how I can get to show you that. Then you also have to understand that where each of these things can be configured, that the distribution list can be configured for them from the Microsoft 365 Admin Center, but cannot be configured from the Entra ID Admin Center, even though Entra has to do with identity. You need to understand that. You also need to understand that when you're dealing with administrative units, you can configure a basic administrative unit from the Microsoft 365 Administrative Center. But when you're looking at a restricted management administrative unit, you're going to the Entra ID Admin Center. I'll get to show you how that works as well. Then under security, you need to understand how to configure conditional access. What do you need to know when you're doing conditional access? What are the do's and don'ts? One of the things you need to understand is when you're configuring conditional access, before pulling it out to the organization, before enabling it for all users, make sure you have a break glass account. What that simply means is that you need to have an account that is excluded from the conditional access policy. Because if you do not have that and you roll out the policy and you enable the policy, and it is a policy that has not been properly configured, you can have a difficult time coming back to either disable that policy or to delete that policy. So note that if you're configuring conditional access, make sure you have a break glass account, the account that has been excluded, and is advisable is one of the global admins. Excluded. I'll get to show you what a global admin means. I don't want to jump ahead of myself for those of us that may not have had any idea whatsoever what we are talking about. Then authentication method. What are different ways you can authenticate as a user? Either by using your authenticator app, the Microsoft, the Google Authenticator, either by using your passwordless sign-in, or by using your email, or by using your phone through calls, or by using security questions. Security questions come in when you're dealing with SSPR. But recently, Microsoft is looking at rolling security questions out and making sure that there's no more available under authentication method. These are some of the things that you need to pay attention to as an M365 administrator. The changes, the transitions, and everything that is happening. Now, I said something about groups before. Before now, it was only the Microsoft 365 group that a user could create, delete, and then restore. But Microsoft have updated it such that the security group can also be deleted and restored. There was a time that a rollout for that particular feature was being done. And those are things that you need to pay attention to and you need to understand. Under the productivity services, we have the managed teams, SharePoint, Exchange, OneDrive to support end user productivity. You need to understand what you're creating and the effect it has. If you're creating a SharePoint site and it's a team site under the SharePoint, it's going to have an M365 presence. You're going to have an M365 group assigned to it. If you are creating a communication site, it doesn't have a presence in M365. So these are some of the things you need to understand. In Exchange, what can you do in Exchange that you cannot do in M365? For OneDrive, you understand that OneDrive does not have an administrative center. Every setting that has to do with OneDrive is still controlled from the SharePoint administrative center. So these are things that you need to understand as an M365 administrator. You need to be able to get the grip of, so that when you have a challenge or you have a user coming up to say that this is what I need to do. For instance, in my organization, there was a time that a particular user was misbehaving in an organization, and the person that my employer came and was like, I need you to delete this user. I was like, no, I think it's advisable we do not delete him, because if for any reason he comes to apologize and you need to, it was more like an informal setting, and you forgive him and you need to take him back, we'll now need to recreate the account again. Why don't I just disable sign-in for him and deny him access to that particular feature he's using to function? So that if tomorrow he comes back and he says, okay, I'm apologizing, and then you guys get to sort your things, we can easily just bring him back. Because the moment you delete a user and the person's mailbox has not been, retention policy is not applied to the mailbox, or you've not converted the user to a shared mailbox, after 30 days, that user and everything pertaining to that user is gone. So if there were emails that the user was dealing on that you needed to have access to, you will not be able to have access to it. You get? So when I gave him that counsel, I was like, oh, I think you're very right. Okay, just deny him access. Then let's see how he works between the few days and see how we can. So in a few days' time, he called me back. I was like, okay, the guy has come to apologize and we are back in good terms. Give him access again. So that was how I was able to sort that out. So you need to be able to understand these things, to be able to give counsel to your employers. You need to know what you're doing. You need to know your onions. Because there are times they can come to you and say, okay, I have this vision in my head. I think we should have a particular group where if messages are being sent, any member of this particular team can go to that particular group and then respond to the message on behalf of the team. Or they can also go and respond on behalf and indicate that they want that responded on behalf. Or they can also access it from their Outlook. The moment you hear him talking about it in that area, your mind should just do that, okay, what they need is a shared mailbox. And you should know exactly how to configure a shared mailbox and exactly how to design permissions for that shared mailbox. The send as on the send on behalf permissions. I've done a video on that in my to see it. That was the last video I did. You get to see it. So those are some of the things that you need to pay attention to and gain mastery of as a Microsoft 365 administrator. Very, very important. Now, another thing you need to know, we have roles in Microsoft 365. And the Microsoft 365 uses role-based access control to ensure that admin has only the permissions they need, following the principle of least privilege. What this simply means is that if you're an administrator, if you're an M365 administrator, you should be able to assign permissions to users based on what they need to do and nothing more. It's advisable by Microsoft that you should have less than 5 global administrators. A global administrator basically is someone that has full access. A global administrator can do and undo. He has a whole lot of, it's a powerful role. In fact, it's advisable that if you do not give out this role to people carelessly. You are very, very careful, because whosoever is your global administrator can come into your tenant and take you out as the owner of the tenant and claim ownership and delete everything that pertains to your organization. So this is a role that, if possible, minimize as much as you can the number of people that have the global admin role. He has full access. He has full access. Very powerful role. Very powerful. In fact, if you are employing someone as an MTV administrator, just give him the role based on what you want him to do. Don't just give out the global administrator. If not, if the global administrator's account is compromised, you can lose your tenant. You can lose your account. Now, for the user administrator, those are people that manage users. Basically, they can onboard users, they can reset password for non-admin users, they can just do a bit of things, everything that has to do with users and the rest. For help desk, they can reset passwords, a few passwords, and they have their own roles. I'll get to show you where you can see exactly what each of these roles can carry out. Then for the authentication, this one has to do with anything that has to do with authentication methods. He had the right to go in there and require a re-authentication method to be redone. Then the Teams administrator. You also have a Teams administrator where you can decide to go back to the Teams admin center and be able to configure Teams, configure the settings for your meetings, your calendars, and the rest. SharePoint administrator is also there, compliance administrator, security administrator, and exchange administrator. Now, I need to make you understand something. If in an organization, you give somebody, for instance, the team administrator role, the person will not be able to access the SharePoint administrator admin center, because that jurisdiction, the jurisdiction of influence, or where he's supposed to function, is just Teams. So that's where he will be able to function. So you need to understand these peculiarities and know exactly how you can assign roles. And you can also decide to customize a role for a user based on your preference. I need this user to have this and have this. And another very powerful role that I forgot to mention is a privileged authenticator administrator role. We'll get to see that when I go to the tenant. Privileged authenticator administrator, a very powerful role as well. Very powerful role. Now, I also say here that admin units can further segment access to reduce risk and protect sensitive data. Let me explain to you what administrative units are in brief. Let's say you have an organization, let's say you have a school, and in your school you have different faculties. You have faculty of education, you have faculty of science, you have faculty of engineering, and you want to assign administrators to manage each of those faculties. You don't want it to be that the person has a tenant-wide privilege. He doesn't have a permission over the entire organization. That's where administrative units come in. So you can just create an administrative unit and assign a particular user to be an administrator for that, to have a role for that administrative unit. So the person's scope of influence, or the way the person can actually effect changes, is not for the whole tenant. It's just based on that particular space, that small admin unit that you created. For instance, you can call an admin unit finance, and everybody that is under finance will be influenced by the person that is the administrator for finance AU. So it further segments access to reduce risk and protect sensitive data. Now, while we also have the administrative unit, we also have what we call the restricted management administrative unit. Now, this is a special kind of administrative unit that even the global administrator cannot reset a password of somebody in that administrative unit. If you configure a restricted management administrative unit, the global admin, though he has full access, he cannot reset the password of such a user. The only person that has authority to influence that user that is in that restricted management administrative unit is somebody that has been assigned a role to that administrative unit. Please take note of that. I'll see how I can show you this. I'll maximize the time we have to make sure I show you all I need to show you. So do not forget, admin unit, you can further segment access to reduce risks and protect sensitive data. So if you have an organization and you want to say, okay, this is it, admin unit is one of the most effective ways you can restrict access. Give somebody, say, anytime anything has to do with these people, you are the one managing it. If there's any issue, I know who to hold. I know who has access to people that are in this organization and in this place. So that's it. And you also need to understand the licensing requirements for these features to be made effective in your organization. The licensing requirements, it does not work for everybody. Now, what are the tools and identity security essentials? Under admin portal, I've already said a lot about this. We have the M35 admin center, we have the Entra admin center, we have the Teams, the SharePoint, and the Exchange admin center. We have the Intune and the Security Compliance Center. We have the Identity Security Essential, where we have the MFA, we have the conditional access policies, we have the sign-in logs and the risky user detection, and we have the password reset and the authentication methods. These are some of the things that you can configure in your M365 tenants by doing the exact administrative center to go to. I'll get to the admin center and get to show you exactly how most of these things work. So we're going to be having a live demo here. I'm going to be creating a user. I'll be assigning a license to a user. I'll reset a password. I'll assign an admin role. I'll show you how you can view your sign-in logs. I'll show you how you can manage MFA, and I'll show you exactly how conditional access can be overviewed. You also have other features like the privilege identity management. Now, the privilege identity management is not available for people that have Entra ID license P1. It's only from Entra license P2, Entra ID P2 license. The conditional access can be available for those that have Entra ID P1. But if you do not have Entra ID P1 or Entra ID P2, and you just have the baseline, the basic Entra ID, what you have access to is the security default. But note that the moment you enforce the conditional access policy, the security default is enabled. So they are mutually exclusive. They do not work together. You're going to decide that, okay, I need to upgrade my organization to an Entra P1 license, and you enforce conditional access. The security default has to be disabled. I'll see how I can get to show you that. So I'm going to go into the live demo now before I come back and we continue with our slides. So let's go to where we have our tenant. Now, this is where we have the M365 Administrative Center. Now, I'm going to be showing you exactly how. So there are two ways you can get to access this. You can sign in as an administrator. Note, you need to have an administrative role for you to access this. And you come under, click on Apps and More. If you do not see it here, if you do not see your admin here, when you have an admin role, you can go to More Apps and search for it and you get to see it. This is an agent. This is not the administrative center. This is an agent. So do not be confused with this. So another way you can decide to access it is by coming to your browser and typing what we call cmd.ms. This is where almost all the admin centers are being listed. And you can just type admin here. Enter. No. Sorry about that. Let me see. cmd.ms admin, Microsoft 365 admin. This is where I'm looking for. And I click on this to take me directly to the admin center. So you can go from cmd.ms or you can go from when you've signed in as a user here. Now, while we are here, we just want to set up a user. Very simple and straightforward. For us to set up a user, what we need to do is to come to where we have our active users. I believe we can see these active users here. So I'm going to be running us down what happens. This is where we come to add a user. Click on users. Now I'm signed into this account as a global administrator. I'm signing into this account as a global administrator, and I want to add a user. I'm refreshing the admin center. If I come back here, I go to where we have users, click on active users, and I go to where we have add a user. This is where you can decide to add a user. If you're adding one user, if you're adding multiple users, you can click here. If you're configuring MFA, you can click here. User, if you have a template for the user you want to add, this is where you get to use. So I'm just going to go ahead and add a user. When I click on add a user, I'll come to where I can configure the first name for that user. So I'm going to use the first name, Win, and I use Basi. Then under display name, this is the name. Under username, I can just, now based on the naming convention for your organization, if your organization uses first name dot last name, so it will be oin.b, you can change your domain here based on the domain preference. For this, I can decide to change this and use iberidem.microsoft.com. And then for here, please take note of this part. We have the automatically create a password, and we have where you can require the user to change password when they first sign in. If I click on automatically create a password, it will generate a password for me at the end after creating the user. And if I require the user to not use that password, but to change it to something more personal, I can now get to tick this. So after ticking this, I can go next. Now, another thing you need to understand is that one of the very important things that you need to set up is the location for your license, where you want to give the license. You can decide to use a different location. If it's not Nigeria, you can choose based on where you're based or based on where the user is based. Then you can assign a license. For this particular tenant, I do not have any more licenses to assign for this developer tenant. There are 25 licenses. I've used all, but I'll show you how I can free up a license and assign it. Then I can decide to assign this one. I still have this license available. Now, the moment you assign a license, it gives you access to application. There's a difference between licenses and roles. Let me see if I can quickly just delete a user. Or let me show you exactly how I can take off license from a user so that there's a license available for that user. If I come to this guy, for instance, David King, and I go to where we have his licenses and apps, and I scroll down and I untick this. This was one license is available now, and I save the changes. So I have taken out the license from David King, and then I come down to this, my user I needed to add. And if I try to refresh, it will get to cancel everything I've done. If I go next, I need to refresh. Okay, there's one license available. Okay, there's no. I can't assign this license. Let me see if I refresh it to tell me that, okay, I can refresh it. I have to start the whole process again just to make sure that the license that I took out from that person is available for me to assign to this user so that I can explain what I need to explain. Okay, it's back here. I need to input the name again. Oyin Basi. Then we have display name Oyin Basi. Then we have the username oyin.b. And as I said, I changed the domain to iberidem.microsoft.com. Then under password, as I said earlier, you can automatically create a password or allow a particular password that I want the user to use to sign in. But I'll click on automatically. I can require the user to change their password after they first signed in. The moment they've signed in, they need to change their password. I can go next, select the location. That one license that I freed up from that other user, David King, is available for Oyin Basi to use now. There's supposed to be 25 licenses. Now, if you scroll down under apps, we do not have any apps here. But the moment I select the license, I have 87 apps available. And the license that is available for the developer tenant is the Microsoft 365 E5 license. Very powerful license. Very powerful. It has a lot of, it has Entra ID P2. It has a whole lot. And when I scroll down to apps, I'll get to see every single app I can have access to. But while you're seeing this, you can also decide to say, I want to give this guy access to this license, but I don't want him to have access to Avatar for Teams. You untick this. I don't want him to have access to 365 developer Avatar for Teams additional. You untick this. So he will have access to the license, but he will lose some applications to be able to function. He will not have access to some applications. Now, if you want the license, the user to not have access to a mailbox, you can untick this Exchange Online Plan 2 mailbox license. So the Exchange Online license is very important when you want the user to have access to a mailbox and be able to function with a mail. So if I do not want to make any changes here, I can just leave this. Now, when you're trying to troubleshoot a user, let me just say this before I forget. And this user is saying, I'm having issues with accessing my mailbox and the rest. Try and make sure you come down to licenses and confirm if the user actually has an exchange online plan, either plan 1 or plan 2 license. If not, the user will not have access to a mailbox. This is what gives the user ability to be able to access a mailbox. So now we come under Power Automate. Remember, we had 87 licenses here. If I tick this, it will add 2 more licenses, making it 89 licenses. Then I go next. Then under roles, you can decide to assign a role here. This is where the role comes in. Now, the role, the user can be created without an admin access. You're just a normal user. You have access to the applications, but you do not have access to this administrative center where the magic happens. Or you can decide to say, okay, I want you to have access to admin center, and I want you to be a user administrator. What that simply means is that you're responsible for onboarding and offboarding users and carrying out the certain configurations based on what I want to do. Then you can decide to check what each of these roles can do by clicking on this information here. Now, if you look at the global administrator, it's telling us that he has unlimited access to all management features and most data in all admin centers. Very important. Note that, as I said, the global administrator is a very, 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 very powerful administrator. Very powerful administrator. Then the global reader is also someone that has access to everywhere to read everything, but does not have access to effect changes to anything. It says can view all administrative features and settings in all administrative centers. The way the licenses work is such that for this particular tenant, a purchase is a developer tenant. It's not like it's like a developer. It's just for testing, breaking things, and learning things. But in a real life scenario where you have purchased licenses, when you purchase a license, if you do not assign the license, you paid for the license before you get the license. So if you don't assign it, you pay for something that you're not using. So it's better that when you pay for a license, you make sure you effectively deploy it or assign it to a user to get to use it. I don't know if you understand what I'm saying. Now, let me show you something. Since your question has just come, let me show you exactly how these things work. Now, if you come to this link here, you see we have different types of plans and license and plans and pricing for different individuals. For individuals, this is the plans and pricing. If I click on this and open in a new tab, you get to see how much it costs to get a license for a particular individual. For a personal plan, it's $99.99 per year for one person. This one is for 1 to 6 people. This is how much you pay for a year. This is now basically, this is like individual plans. It's for individuals. When you're dealing with maybe having a plan for yourself and maybe you have 6 people you want to share the plan with, you can go ahead with this. But when you're dealing with an organization like a business, if you come down to where we have the for business licenses, you get to see how much it costs. We have the business premium, we have the business standard, we have the business basic. This is the list with $7 for each user for a month. You can also decide to pay yearly. So this is how it works. So each of these licenses cost a particular amount. For each license that you're getting, it costs a particular amount. I hope you get me, Sunny. So when you get the license, try as much as possible to make sure it's used. You can get with Teams, you can get without Teams. If you decide to use collaboration, it's up to you. If you decide to use collaboration, that's also basically up to you. So these are the highlights of what it provides for you. Do you guys? Now, if for any reason you buy the business basic, but you still want to enforce something like maybe privileged identity management, you can buy the Entra P2 license as an add-on to be able to enforce that PIM. I'll show you where you can get to purchase that from the admin center. You can actually buy that as an add-on, add it to your business basic license, and then assign it to a particular user to be able to manage identity access management for users. So I've talked about this. I'm going to assign this license, and then I'll go to save changes, and then I have given her a role. Okay, this no, this was someone else. This is what I was dealing with. I've assigned him high user administrator. I go next. Then I go to where we have this is what I'm configuring. In Basi, this is what we have here as this is the automated. These are the licenses in Nigeria. This is the Power Automate and the rest, and this is the role. And I click on finish adding. So the moment I finish adding the license, and no product assigned to inbox, you can always assign later. Try again. I think this is because of this particular thing that I did here. Oh, I mistakenly went and saved changes for this guy. So that's why I'm having issues there. Let me take out the license from her, from this guy. Go back here. So let me search for the user, then quickly access the user. Then I'll go to where we have licenses and apps, and then click on the licenses available now, and then save changes. Well, that happened because I already saved from the other ends, and that guy had the license back. So we are done with this, then we close it. So this user has a license and has a role. So you can easily sign into the user. If I click on if we open a new incognito window, and I go to where we have office.com, I'll be asked to sign in, and I'll also be asked to authenticate. There's a whole lot. If I click on sign in, I can go back here and copy the username for this user. Click this, I go to where we have the username. Where is your username? You can also add manager here. After adding the user, you can decide to add a manager. The reason why you add a manager is because it's basically the manager feature effectively shows up in Outlook when you're trying to look at the organogram of the organization. If I add a manager, I can add myself as a manager to the person. So if I went to track, okay, who was the person that onboarded this person, can easily come here and then see it and then just save changes. When you've done that, you now go to where we have, I'm looking for how to sign in. Okay, click on this. I go to manage username. Oh, yep. I select this, copy it. I didn't copy the password I configured, so I need to go back and copy. I need to reset the password. Now, note the moment you have left that page where you created the user, if you're dealing with M35 Admin Center and you do not copy that password, you will need to reset the password for you to be able to get access to that password again. You will need to. Microsoft does not store the password. So if I paste this and I go next, and I come down here and I say, okay, where is the user? Click on reset password, and I can still allow these features to be here, and I click on reset password, and the password will be reset, and I click on show, copy it, go back to here, paste the password, sign in. So this is just basically user onboarding. You have to keep the user secure. You click on next. This is very important, very, very important. You need to make sure you enforce MFA for your organization to prevent hackers and to make sure that it's much more difficult for them to gain access. I'm going to set up a different authenticator app. I'm going to click next. I want to do this very quickly, and I'm going to scan the QR code and then authenticate from my phone. QR code is up. Scanned it. I go next. Then I input the code. The code I'll be using is giving me the code. And I go next. That's done. So I've done that. Now I set up another layer of authentication. After the username and password, what's the current password? I can paste the current password here. Then I put in my new password. And I go next. Whew. And this time is, and I stay signing, yes. So I'm just going to, this is how it is for you to sign into a new user's account after setting it up. And then what I want to show you now, let me quickly show you is the document you can actually send to the user, what it looks like, and how to make sure that your communication is seamless. So if I come down here and I say, welcome aboard, this is the template of a document you can input the person's username, for instance, the display name, can display name, you can fill the username and password here and give him the steps to sign in. Note, when you're trying to give out the steps, do not talk to the person like you're talking to somebody that is tech savvy. Talk to the person with as basic terms as possible. Welcome aboard. This is your steps to sign in. I'll paste the username here. I think I have the username copied. I press Control V, Windows V, is the username here. This is the username here. Paste the password, depending on what the password was. This is the password. You can just give it, then click sign in, enter your email, enter your password carefully. You can paste the password here. You probably to change your password, type your current password. Every single thing I did here, this is the steps the person has to follow to get it done. So this is a document you can also get to send to make sure that the onboarding process is effective. You can also put in your support contact. This is the support contact for the person to get to access whatever it is the person has, whatever complaint the person may have, the person can reach out to that contact. Then another thing I also need to show you what the checklist looks like. You can design it to your preference. Note that the naming convention is first name or last name. Example, Ibrahim Basi. Confirm details of the name. Do not make mistake. There are people that are very name sensitive. So make sure you confirm the name again and again. Confirm the license to assign to the user. Confirm the user location and assign manager to user, depending on the organization you're working for and what their preference is. Very, very important. So since I've showed you that and what the checklist looks like, I'm going to go back to our user that has signed in. I close this. Now this user has an admin role. If I click on this, you can see that here we do not have the M35 admin center showing you, but I click on more apps, and then you get admin center where the user can go into effect changes. So I go to where we have, I go to search. Where's that search? Oh, where's my search? Okay. Admin center, where are you? Nope. All apps, sorry, go to all apps. Then you see here, admin. You can go to all apps and go to it. Now, let me show you some. Now, when you have, okay, I think you should be done. Internet connection. Wow. Do this. So when you have signed in, taking a bit of time. Wow. The organization and reach them as you reach. You can add multiple contacts. You can add a contact. We have guest users, people that you want to come and collaborate with your organization. This is where they will get to show. Then we have deleted users. They're deleted. They'll be here for 30 days before they are deleted out of the organization. This is still loading. Then we have teams and groups where you can configure your teams and your groups. You can configure 365 team, M365 group. You can configure the distribution and you can configure. My network is actually still loading. Trying to sign sign me in. The difference that you can get to access security, Microsoft Purview for data management, security for securing your organization and configuring other policies, attack surface and the rest, Microsoft Intune for device management, identity for this is what takes you to Entra, Azure, Exchange where you're configuring everything that has to do with mail, SharePoint, Teams, Power Platform, and so on and so forth. So this is just a list of most of the admin centers that you'll be working with as an M365 administrator. So this is trying to load, Entra admin center is loading. And then we can go to where we have, let me check. Yes, she's in now. So if you come down to the users now and you click on active users, you see that she has the ability to see the active users. She can see the teams and groups. But then she can see under billing, what she can see is licenses because she's a user administrator. But if I come down to my tenant, there is a global administrator, and I click on the drop down for billing, I'll get to see much more because I'm a global administrator. So her access is restricted. What she has access to is exactly what she needs to do, nothing more. That's the principle of this privilege is being observed. That all I need you to do is to come here, set up a user, assign licenses, and then just do a few things. So you're limited. It's a privilege role, but then that we set the passwords of a few people, you cannot reset the password of a global administrator and some other very privileged roles like that. So these are just some of the few things that you need to understand when you're talking about coming here to check the user, coming here to be able to access the administrative center. Then let me show you something. When you're troubleshooting an issue, first thing you have to check, please take note of this if you're an admin. You have to come to the service health of the organization and confirm that the issue that you're trying to troubleshoot is not being listed here. Now, before now, there was an incident that was listed here, but it has been cleared. If you have a tenant, go and check your tenant, your service health. You see exactly what I'm seeing here. These are issues that Microsoft is currently working on. So as an M365 administrator, if you're troubleshooting anything, try and come here to check. The user says, oh, that I'm not unable to view my mailbox. Now, this issue is just an advisory issue. What that means is that it has not yet blown out to become an incident. It's not yet a full-blown issue. It's just something that is not full, it has not escalated yet. The moment it escalates, you get to see it becomes an incident. If you click on this incident now, this advisory to take you to the details that surround this particular advisory. what happened, what time it was being, the impact of the thing. Users may be unable to view mailbox storage data in this. This is the info. The affected users are showing the following error message. Storage is temporary. So you just need to go down here, and then these are the updates. The update is actually showing you what is happening per time for this particular issue. Then as an admin, you can also manage notifications for this issue. You can come here and set up your email and say, when this issue, give me notifications for this issue so that when it is resolved, I can send a feedback to my end user to say that the issue has been resolved. You can now go back there and your issue has been sorted out. So this is, I just needed to show you this. Before you troubleshoot anything, come here, check that the issue you are trying to troubleshoot does not have anything to do with this, because if it has something to do with this, you will troubleshoot and troubleshoot and troubleshoot and not have a result, except they have been able to resolve the issue from the Microsoft end. Then let us go to where we have, so this is her account, and then under show all, you can still come down to identity. Let's see the Microsoft Entra Identity Center. So this is basically what it looks like from the admin center. From here, you can go to every other place. And take notes, please. You can only assign licenses from the M365 Administrative Center. You cannot assign licenses from Entra. If you are assigning licenses, it has to be from M365 Administrative Center. At the end of this, I'm going to recommend something that we can do, an applied skill that we can do that will help us to solidify what we are learning today. What we are learning today is very basic, but it's something that is also very important. Now, I want to go to where we can see some of the conditional access policies, the defense mechanism that can be set up. For you to access your conditional access, you can come to your Entra ID. Now, before you even able to access conditional access, you look at my license here, is Microsoft Entra ID P2 license I'm using. Your organization, if you're using Entra ID P1, you will be able to see conditional access here. But if you're using Microsoft Basic, you will not see conditional access. So if you come down to where we have conditional access here, you get to see the policies that are being set. If you're setting a policy, you can attach name, locations, you can set up devices. There's a whole lot that can happen here. I think I have a video on my channel where you can check that out. I'm just going to show you. I have a few policies here that I've set up. One of the policies that is very important that you set up is that you enable MFA for all users. Make sure that every single user, even the user I just created for test, I had to enable MFA. The user had to make sure that he or she enables MFA for you to be able to access it. Then you can come down here. You can see we have under where we have ID governance, we have privileged identity management. This is another feature that you can use to secure your organization. For you to be able to use this, you need to have Entra P2 license, as I said. If you don't have P2, you will not see this feature. You will not be able to use this feature. I can use it because I have P2. Then you can configure the Entra roles, you can configure the Azure resources or the groups that you want to manage. Then another thing you need to understand is that under groups here, you can only create two types of groups here. That is the M365 group and the security group. But when you come to the M365 Administrative Center and you go to where we have groups, you can actually create three. You can actually create the M365 group, the distribution list, and the security group. If you want to create a more advanced distribution list, like the dynamic distribution list, you can always go to where we have the Exchange Online Administrative Center. That is possible from there. What that dynamic distribution simply means is that you can actually assign a user to that particular group based on the features of that user. For instance, you can say that if I'm adding a user and the user belongs to the maybe department of IT, the user should automatically be added to the distribution list. Made possible by dynamic distribution list. We go to where we have Exchange. If I right click this and open it to the new tab, you get to see that. Then if I also go to where we have this person, the person's influence is also limited because the person doesn't have global. Here, let me show you what we have. Let me show you administrative units before I forget. Under roles, we have what we call administrative units. I talked about it. Here, you can configure what we call a normal administrative unit. I have a few of them here. But for you to configure restricted management administrative unit, you need to go to where we have the Entra. If I come to my Entra here now, and I go to where we have roles. Where is roles here? Roles and admins. And I go to admin units, and I want to add an administrative unit, for instance. You see that there's the toggle here to turn it on or turn it off. That toggle is not available from the M365 Administrative Center. It's only available from the Exchange Online Administrative Center. So I've showed you a few things. I've showed you how to onboard a user, how to sign in with the user. I've showed you how if you want to purchase an Entra P2 license, where you're going to go to, you need to have the global admin role or the billing admin role. Come down to your proof or your depending on your license, and then you search for the Entra ID here, and then you can be able to add it. You can add more products, search for it, and be able to add it from the marketplace. So I'm trying to make sure that we understand exactly what I'm saying. So this, I've showed you exactly how to add a user. If you're creating a group, you come down to where we have groups, active teams and groups, go to add a team, add a group. If you're creating this, if you're going to distribution list, you come down here, you add it. If you're going to creating security, and you create it and you add it as well. So that is just things. You can go to my YouTube channel. Every single thing I've talked about, I've expatiated on it from there. Talked about set a password, assign a role, viewing signing. If you want to view your signing logs, this is where you signing logs from here, but you view it much more extensively from the M3 from the Exchange Online Administrative Center. If I come to my users and I go to where we have, it's loading. It's taking a bit of time. My network is actually very amazing today. Okay, while that is loading, I'll still get to show you that conditional access overview of how conditional access can be configured and so on and so forth. Now, under the summary, basically, as an identity administrator, you're responsible for protecting identity. You're the first line of defense for digital identity. You may use issues where they say, okay, my identity is compromised. You're the first person to go in there, sign in, and reset password based on what the attack may be or what the person is be complaining as the issue. Now, under manage everything, you are managing users, licenses, security, compliance across multiple portals. A whole lot of portals. The team admin center, the exchange admin center is a critical role. The modern organization depends on admins to keep operations secure and productive. You are a very dependent person in an organization. They depend on you to make sure that everything works smoothly. They depend on you to make sure that everything works the way it ought to work. I know I've not extensively showed you what I want to show you. I'm trying to make sure that we end it as the way we ought to did. So let me check if this is properly loaded. It's having a bit of time to load. Let me see this. Ooh, let me see this. Okay, if I come to, for instance, I come to this person and Darby, and I want to block sign for this user. The moment I click on this, so after this is just a summary of everything.